G'day guys, my name is Wildkard and welcome back to my channel. Thank you for following my content. If you want to buy me a coffee, hit the join button down below. Otherwise, let's have a look at what's going on with today's content. It's Tuesday. It's News Day. Let's have a look at what's happening in the world of union. So this week in rugby, we have had a lot of international tests being played. The autumn internationals is in full swing. First up, we had Wallabies versus Scotland. Going into this game, Wallabies brought back some of their old-timers. Rory Arnold, Curly Bill, and Will Skelton was called into the squad in the starting 23. And to be fair, I thought these guys weren't particularly outstanding, pretty average stuff. The scrummaging was pretty bad. Maybe the introduction of Arnold and Skelton at second row position has something to do with it. But overall, I didn't think these players made that much of an impact, especially with Arnold and Skelton taking a spot over Matt Phillip and what's his other name? Darcy Swain was a bit unnecessary in my opinion. And this game was also Romain Poit. I think it's pronounced Romain Poit. His last referee. He is infamously known to be the referee that gave out the Lions Test draw. Remember the draw in New Zealand in 2017 where basically there was an offside and there was an accidental offside and it was supposed to be a full-on penalty and he reverted it, a full-on penalty, to a scrum, and Kieran Reid was just like screaming at him. Could not believe his eyes. And basically, yeah, he's the referee. And I have a video on my top 10 Lions tour moment on my channel. Go check out that. Basically, yeah, that's probably his most infamous moment. A Lions Test draw against New Zealand because he reverted a last-minute penalty to a scrum. So this game, Australia again lost, but a close game loss to Scotland. But this close loss was the result of, I think the kicking was a little bit behind in Scotland in terms of like on-field kicking, and also the kicking. So the kicking game wasn't that as good as the Scottish kicking game. There was a lot of niggling out of the Wallabies. I did not like. So there was where Tom Ryle was like out on the sideline trying to slap the ball off Stuart Hogg, and got penalised. And Paisami was tackled, like basically pushed Finn Russell out of the ruck and tackled him like 5 minutes behind the defensive line and got penalised for that as Australia was going over for a try. So that was a really costly one. So just a lot of little niggling stuff like that from Australia I didn't really like. The referee may have made a tough decision against Australia where Alan Alatoa got yellow carded for limp hitting a player on the ground on the face while Australia was going over for a try as well. So another try denied and a yellow card because of a very soft limp arm. Romain Poit was basically, Hooper was asking Poit to reconsider that, and Poit was like, it's my last game, we can talk about it after this, I don't really care. It was TMO decision, so a little bit tough for Australia, but and also there was a bit of a water boy incident in Australia as well. So the ball went out, Finn Russell trying to get the ball, the Australian water boys, one including the scrum coach, was basically blocking him from getting the ball, and Finn Russell basically pushed him out of the way. Like, if you are going to be in the way, just get out of the way. Like, if the ball is near you, just get out of the way. Let the player get the ball. I don't want to see this. Do you get it? I don't care if you're the Australian coach. I don't want to see this. I don't want you to put the Wallabies in dispute after the game. Like, I don't care. If you win the game, you lose the game, it's not a big deal. I don't want, like, additional drama off the field to affect the game. Like, I thought this was really unprofessional from him. Sure enough, he's the scrum coach. Maybe you should focus on making sure that the scrum goes well, because the Wallaby scrum was absolutely atrocious. Despite the yellow card, the scrum was atrocious right from the beginning, and it was supposed to be your job to do that, and it's definitely not your job to try to interfere with the game when the ball is out of bound. Okay, so I was not impressed by this at all. And also, maybe the players on the field, or the niggling and stuff on the field that gets the Wallabies penalised, maybe that has something to do with your coaching style. If you think it's okay to do this sort of things off the field, to try to block Finn Russell for doing a quick throw. If you think that's okay off the field, I wonder, no wonder why the Wallaby players think it's okay to do this stuff on the field. Like, it's just, yeah, really unprofessional. Get that out of your system, please. And also basically, there was a lot of criticism going for Dave Rennie to lifting their performance, including criticism from Andrew Merchant saying, basically the Wallabies could potentially get thumped by England coming in next week if you keep playing like this. And Dave Rennie was like, a pretty tough statement, actually. Dave Rennie was like, well, seems like Andrew Merchant has underestimated the Scottish team. More news from Australia. Dan Haylett-Petty, we'll have a look at this. Concussion seems to be a big issue nowadays. So Dan Haylett-Petty had a full season off due to concussion, and he's decided to retire. So yeah, seems like a pretty serious concussion injury that he's basically out the whole season for the Rebels, and then he's basically retired from rugby. And then New Zealand versus Italy. This was another big win for New Zealand. They had a really slow start for the first 27 minutes or so, and it was looking like Italy was pretty much in control of the game. There was a lot of small handling errors from New Zealand until late in the game, after 27 minutes, especially in the second half, when the reserves came on, the All Blacks finally able to kick back into the gear and pull the game away comfortably. And as a result of this big win against Italy, the All Blacks made a new world record for highest amount of points scored in a calendar year, and also averaging the highest amount of tries scored so far. So they still got, I think, two tests coming up left against Ireland and France. So they still have the opportunity to set more records, but they are currently sitting at 89 tries in this year. So they still need 11 tries to get to 100. So let's see if the mighty All Blacks can get to 100 test tries, because that'll be a huge occasion. Get 100 test tries in 1 year. That is huge. So we shall see if that's going to happen against Ireland and France. Yeah, bit tough. So as a result of the Italian team, Brad Weber was taken off the field due to HIA, head injury. So Aaron Smith is called in to Dublin as a reserve halfback. Aaron Smith is the best halfback in the world. He's taking a break basically from rugby due to him having a young new baby. So he's been called into the team as an emergency now. So 101 tests as a reserve halfback is a bit of just a massive addition to the All Blacks side. So the other game that was played was Ireland versus Japan. New Zealand's next opponent coming up next weekend. Japan had a really spectacular performance against Ireland had a really spectacular performance against Japan here. Johnny Sexton's 100th Test match put on a magnificent performance, probably the best performance I've seen him in recent years. It's just spectacular. Really good backline, smooth backline. Unlike the game All Blacks playing against Italy, this was played at the same time, back-to-back games playing at the same time, and literally like stark contrast between the two sides. The Irish was silky smooth, perfect handling across the board, really good breakdown, really fast breakdown. The forwards were able to create a lot of hard running momentum, forward momentum to create that platform for the backline for Ireland. And Japan was really struggled, maybe lacked a bit of leadership. Some of the older generation Japanese players from the World Cup kind of like retired, so maybe lacked that little bit of leadership to carry the full team out of a ditch, out of pressure. So Japan wasn't able to mount a comeback against the overwhelming performance of the Irish team. So this was very good, and Andy Farrell would be very proud of that performance. To be honest, this is probably the best performance Andy Farrell's put on during his coaching at Ireland. And a big test next week for the All Blacks. So if Andy Farrell could beat the All Blacks, that will solidify him as probably one of the best coaches in Ireland. It will be a pretty big moment for Andy Farrell. And then England versus Tonga, this game. Also, England put a clinical performance out of Tonga. Not only that they score a lot of tries, but they had a bit of COVID issue going into this game. So Owen Farrell tested positive before the game, so he was not able to play, and England had to put George Furbank in at fly half, despite having Marcus Smith, who is many believe the future of England rugby, the future of the 10 position, on the bench still. So Furbank normally plays at 15, I believe, was put in off position fly half for England. Despite that, England was still able to comfortably put on, I think, 10 tries, 10 or 11, 11 tries over Tonga. So this was a huge performance for England. And Marcus Smith coming on the second half really showed like just world-class performance. And it was just electrifying to watch, actually. But the test turns out for Owen Farrell was a false positive. So Owen Farrell don't have to continue his last selection. He's rejoined the England camp and he's set to play against Australia next week. So they had been able to talk with why Marcus Smith, the prominent number 10, left on the bench, not starting, because Eddie Jones apparently don't want Marcus to get too far ahead of himself and, maybe, started to believe in his own hype too much. That's why he said he kept Marcus on the bench. And he referred to some like English tennis player, I don't know, like some girl. Apparently she was like 18 and she won like Wimbledon or something. And then she started become like living this famous life and basically like and her performance just went down the drain essentially after she became famous. So Eddie Jones basically referred that as an incident, why he doesn't want Marcus Smith, a young man, to get too far ahead of himself, and started to, keep trying to keep him grounded. That's why he didn't start him at number 10. And Joe Marlor, so then Owen Farrell gets cleared for COVID. Joe Marlor gets tested positive for COVID on Monday or yesterday. So there was just like, another guy who this time they did like backup testing to make sure he wasn't a false test. And so Joe Marlor is definitely out for the weekend. And there has been talks of bringing back Billy Vunipola for backup. Not Billy Vunipola, Mako Vunipola to come back in as a backup prop. But they also tested all the England staff and players. The flow test, which is like a less accurate one, returned negative results. But they also took PCR tests for everyone as well, just in case, and they're still waiting for the result. So hopefully England rugby is cleared and they will be able to play this weekend against Australia with their full strength. Otherwise, this is going to be a bit iffy. Not sure what's going on with the players. And big name was like left out of England rugby, Sam Simmons. So this guy was, I think there must be some like personality issues between him and Eddie Jones, because he has been talked about a lot in the media as probably like the best number 8 essentially for England. And in Six Nations this year, he wasn't selected. But due to his good performance in the club rugby, he was selected for the Lions tour. I had a like decent run in Lions, so not like full starting number 8 or anything, but during the club games, he was played pretty well. So then he was selected to England again, and then he got cut. So there must be some personality issues between him and Eddie Jones. But he is. So he was deemed good enough for Warren Gatland, but Eddie Jones seemingly don't want him to be part of the team. So the other international game, Wales versus South Africa. This was a very, very tight game. South Africa were able to pull away with pull ahead like late in the second half to finally close out this game with a very tight win. So out of this game, there has been some two big controversy following out of this game. I'll actually go into this game as well. Alun Wyn-Jones had a shoulder injury against New Zealand. Initially was thought just maybe a little bit of a stinger. They had a scan. He needs shoulder surgery. So Alun Wyn-Jones is out for quite a number of months as a result of this. And also there was a big incident during the game where one of the Welsh fans ran onto the field and basically impeded Liam Williams from being able to potentially score a try. So there was like basically Liam Williams was on the wing. This guy was like just in front of him getting tackled by the security guards. And then Liam Williams was basically distracted and overran his line. The pass when he had to he overran his support line. He has to reach back to catch the ball. And then eventually he was hit. And then he also had to kind of tiptoe around the player, the guy on the ground. So it really affected him. And after he was not able to score, he was really angry. He was pointing at the ground, and he was yelling and stuff. So whether or not he was able to score without the interference, we're not sure. But the issue is there is an interference and it's just not clean. And that's the big problem. So really, really sad to see. If Liam Williams just got cleaned out and not able to score, fair enough. But just, leaving a question mark like this, it's not something that It's good for the news, but it's not something that I wanted to see in a game. And then also the big other decision was basically also the Springboks had a try disallowed where Kobe's Reinhardt put up a high ball, and then basically the high ball was a really poor kick, like a box kick, a really poor box kick. It just went like 5 meters and came straight down. And then one of the Welsh players kind of like failed to catch it properly. The ball bounced on the ground. Eben Etzebeth gets the ball. He runs free. And then he had Mapimpi in support, links up with him, and Mapimpi goes in for a try. So this was a try because Eben Etzebeth was not offside, but they had TMO reviewed it and said there was offside. So how this worked, so like I was like really confusing like what was happening. I didn't even know what was happening here, so I had to look it up. So basically what's happening is there's a rule called the 10-meter rule of where the ball is going to land. I don't know if that's the actual name for it, but basically there's a rule where if there's a kick and the ball is going to land in a spot, any player that's within that spot that is in the offside position must move 10 meters out of the spot before they can re-enter. So even if they are even if they are like just standing still, it's not good enough. They need to move out of the 10-meter spot to clear out the landing zone, essentially, to allow other players to contest for the ball, essentially. So that is the rule. You have to move out of the 10-meter range of where the ball is going to land if you're an offside player. So basically, this kick went like 5 meters or something. All the players that were in the ruck were offside because they are in front of the kicker and they failed to move out of the 10-meter area where the ball landed. That's the referee decision, essentially. Because the rule says they must clear the landing area where the ball's going to land because they're offside players. So Eben Etzebeth wasn't offside. Mapimpi wasn't offside. The players that were in the ruck where the box kicker was kicked were offside because the ball did not go 10 meters. That's the ruling for disallowing the try. Let me know. So there's a lot of controversy whether that's correct or not. A lot of people thought that was incorrect because the players, obviously in the ruck, you can't move back. You're trapped under piles of bodies. But then the rule does say, that's basically what strictly speaking, that's how the rule is written. You must clear out of the 10-meter range if you're an offside player to allow, to clear the space for safety reasons, essentially. To allow players to contest the ball, essentially. So yeah, that's the rule. You let me know what you think, whether that's correct or not. So the Springboks has announced the team already for Scotland, and the big change is Elton Yangshi's the number 10. I did think 100 Pollard's performance last week was pretty poor. Like when the game actually turned around, the Springboks actually pulled ahead when Yangshi's came onto the field. So yeah, Pollard. I do know that Yangshi's goal kicking is not as good as Pollard, but I do think Yangshi's overall direction of the game, flow of the direction is a bit better. I should go through the full list later this week when Scottish team announces their player. We'll do a full lineup comparison, but that's kind of like the biggest change from the Springbok team going into next week's game. Lastly, the France versus Argentina. Big win for France at home. Argentina, massive improvement on their performance. Was well in the game to beat France all the way to the last minute. There was a 23-minute try disallowed by to Argentina, which could have led to Argentina winning the game, actually. So I think Ben O'Keefe made a wrong decision there as well, where the Argentinian player clearly was not, it was like inconclusive to say whether the ball was grounded or not, but Ben O'Keefe decided that he made for whatever reason that the ball was held up, despite the video footage doesn't really show that it was held up over the line. So this was a really weird decision, a really bit hard done by to the Argentinians, but overall massive improvement, especially against a very strong French team. And also Carl Hayman joins the legal suit against the World Rugby for player safety in regards to concussion. So Carl Hayman has been diagnosed with early onset of dementia at 41, only 41. And this guy, when I was a kid, to be honest, we look up to Carl Hayman. We thought, a lot of, you probably don't understand this. A lot of you guys, people think, oh, you want to grow up to be Dan Carter, you want to grow up to be Richard McCaw, or whatever, or Brian O'Driscoll. But when I was growing up, me and my friends, we wanted to be Carl Hayman because he was the best tight head prop in the world. I kid you not. We wanted to be Carl Hayman. We didn't want to be Dan Carter. We wanted to be Carl Hayman because he was an absolute monster in the scrummaging, and we just absolutely loved him. And and it's really like sad for me to see that he suffered so much head injuries that he's having like really, really bad issues with his concussion symptoms. So yeah, this is just a bit sad to see, honestly. And anyway, so the World Rugby is set to vote eligibility issues coming up next soon. I think it's soon. So I'm not sure exactly the date, but they're going to vote from this. So basically, at the moment, the rule is if you play for the All Blacks or any other nation, you're not allowed to play that nation again. And any other nation, you're locked into that nation for life. And then there's a loophole that apparently if you play for the sevens team for the Olympics, then you are able to switch. So we saw Tomani switch to Tonga from Australia after playing for the Olympics for Tonga in Tokyo this year. So then that allowed him to switch. But so that's like a loophole. But in technical terms, you're not allowed to switch. So the World Rugby is going to look into the rule change to allow players to switch after 3 years of inactivity from the original nation. So this will allow, a lot of these huge names to play for, different nations after serving their time with the All Blacks and the Wallabies, for instance. And also, now maybe Van der Merwe will be able to play for Springboks again. Who knows? But so that's the rule. That's the rule change they're looking at implementing. And also, there was talks of Israel Folau wanting to play for Tonga. So that's some pretty big names popping out of popping out of the club rugby, wanting to play, because it is difficult for these players. If they play for Australia, they can make millions of dollars a year, and then later on they get sacked or they get left out for whatever reason. They can still play for Tonga because Tonga desperately need the talent, but they're not allowed. So this change is something that's really, really good for especially a lot of the tier 2 islander nations. So this talk of our World 12s. World Rugby is not interested to pursue this concept, but there's some talks about players could be making quite a bit of money for playing for the World 12s. So 12s is basically something that they want to do as a 12-player tournament, and a 12-a-side tournament. So 6 forwards, 6 backs. I don't know why you want to have a 12. It sounds like rugby league with I don't know. And then hopefully this picture doesn't get me demonetized. But Louis Rizamet, this guy here, he came out to criticize Warren Gallen's tactics in the Lions tour, saying that there should be more attacking. Louis, do you not know that Louis? Is it Louis? Anyway, did you not know that Warren Gallen's still going to be the Lions coach for the next Lions tour? If you want to get selected, maybe not biting the hand that feeds you, okay? So, yeah, there has been more criticism towards Warren Gatland's Lions tour. Anyway, guys, let me know what you think. And I'll see you guys a bit later this week for the previews. And thank you for watching. Like, comment, and subscribe. I'll see you guys soon next week. Cheers.